Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our game day show for the season finale with Ohio State. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Joining us once again this year, as has been our tradition the last 14 years, is the angel of the big house, beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. We'll also hear a few cuts from Ryan Day's Tuesday presser. For the final time in the regular season, let's get it started with my view from Section 17. In so many ways, I'm still basking in the glow of the last 3 years of Michigan football, especially when it comes to this game. In my lifetime, I've enjoyed every single win over these guys, but the last 3 years have been special, probably because in the last 20, we have experienced such gut-wrenching disappointment in this game. Each win was different, but they were all special, and I will savor them forever just like you. Now comes this Saturday. It's still the greatest spectacle in college football, and yes, even though we are 3-score underdogs, I'm still excited. The football guy in me knows beating this Ohio State team is going to take an effort for Michigan that we haven't seen yet this year. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. But we're going to have to play out of our minds on both sides of the ball and hope Ohio State makes some mistakes to help us. As the late great Bob Ufer always said, the bad news is, on paper, this is a mismatch. The good news, we aren't playing the game on paper. This is in fact why we tee it up and play the game. So when 12 noon approaches on Saturday, I will be ready and expecting a Michigan victory. I have faith that the young men who don the maize and blue will show up and give it their very best. Will it be good enough? Time will tell. At his Tuesday presser, Ryan Day said his only focus this week is on doing whatever it takes to win.
This game is a war. And anytime there's a war, there's consequences and casualties, and then there's the plunder and the rewards that come with it. That's what it is. And I just think that that's really what it comes down to. And so, as we all say, and it happened in my press conference, the number one job is to win this game. And so, that's the focus right now. And I don't want to get too much into the past because we're just focused on right now. And we've worked really hard to get to this point. I think I'm excited with the fact that, our guys are here now because, when you go through the off season and you talk about this game, it's just like, all right, well, how many times are we going to talk about this? We got to get to this game and go play it. We're finally here right now. So that'll be the focus. And then in the off season, we'll figure out what's what.
Day said he is motivated by how excited his team is for this one.
I'm excited about this game. I'm excited about this team. I love the look in their eye. I love coming to work every day. But this is not about me. It's about these seniors who decided to come back. They want to have a pair of gold pants. They want to have hardware. So that's what motivates me. And I'm excited for them, so they can go out there and play this thing and go win it.
He said the key to the game on Saturday will be, as it always is, winning the running game battle.
We don't have a choice. We have to if we're going to win the game. So we'll always do what we think is best. But, it comes down to everybody executing at a high level and physicality. And our running backs got to get downhill and find all those hidden yards. Our offensive line has got to get movement up front and handle their front. They have a good front. There's no question about that. But that's not going to change our attack. I mean, we got to do what we've done and trust our preparation and go get it. So, yeah, I mean, the team who runs the ball is going to control the game.
My guest today says keeping the game close and getting on the board early is critical for Michigan on Saturday. Joining us next is the angel of the Big House, beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. So stay with us. Joining us on our game day show today as we get ready for the game is beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. Once again, Angelique, great to have you with us.
It is a great tradition that we have, so I'm very appreciative that I get to talk to you the week of the game.
Well, as we know, we missed the COVID year, but for the last 14 years, during good years and bad years, we've said the same thing, both of us. This is our favorite week of the year, and not even a 6-5 record changes that for me, and I don't think for you, because the game itself overshadows the records, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, it really does. I mean, it meant everything to me as a little girl in Cincinnati, and I think it means the same thing for kids here and adults here, and same thing in Ohio. It is the game, and it's it's the colors, it's the sounds, it's the bands, it's the play, and I mean it's gonna be cold on Saturday in Columbus at the Shoe, and it'll have a different feeling. Doesn't feel like all the eyes of the country will be on that game, but I think for people who follow both teams and people who love rivalries in college football, it's hard to beat this. And I do love it. I know you love it, and it's just a great week. But I keep coming back to, I still wish this game was before Thanksgiving, because I think it's like a hiccup in the week, and I miss having it end the week before.
I do too. There's too much going on during the week of the game now, so it's I guess it's who you ask that question to. The younger generation, they're going to say, "Hey, that's great. This is great where it is." But for those of us who maybe go back a few decades to this game, not so great. So
well, I don't. I've just heard about it from you. So yeah.
Yeah, I've mentioned it. So, but you know what, Angelique? In the 14 years you and I have been doing it, we've seen more frustration than victories during that period. And when it comes to the game, that is, Rich Rod was at the helm the first year we did our preview, then Brady Hoke, then Jim, now Sharon. The last 3 years, we knew this matchup was pretty darned even. This year, at least on paper, I hate to say this, it feels more like the Rich Rod or the Hoke years, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, it definitely weighs in every category Ohio State's favor, and the game is in Columbus. And I go back to talking to quarterbacks over the years. It's hard for a guy, especially a first-time starter, to go into Columbus and play. So you've got Davis Warren going in there, and he certainly looked like he improved last week against Northwestern, and but this is a different animal, and when it just looks like everything, the odds are stacked against them, and that's why Ohio State's 3-touchdown favorites going into this one, Mike. And it's I don't think this is a great Ohio State team. I haven't been able to say that, but I think they have their weaknesses and they have injuries. They're dealing with stuff on their offensive line, but when you look at the statistics, and their quarterback is really good, even when he's getting hit, when he just doesn't get rattled. And Will Howard, I mean, and so they have all the pieces, and they have a schedule that built built, I thought, it was a pretty good schedule. It reminded me a little bit of Michigan's last year, and they've kind of built to this moment. And I think it's going to be very tough for Michigan to overcome everything Ohio State's going to present on Saturday.
Yeah, I think so too. But at his Tuesday presser, Ryan Day talked about how much this game meant to the players, and we already know how much it means to him. But the odd thing about this is not one player on that roster has experienced beating Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And Michigan talked about that for years, saying, we don't have anyone here that's ever beaten Ohio State. But that seems very strange given how this rivalry has played out in the last 20 years, doesn't it?
It is extremely strange. And then I go way back to the John Cooper era, though, when Cooper was 2-10-1 against Michigan. I remember Marcus Ray, Michigan safety, talking about that and saying, he just kept saying, we're in their heads. We are in their heads. And then that cycle changed, and coaches changed in Michigan too. So maybe Ohio State was in their heads. I don't know, but they certainly were more talented. But it's I don't know. I mean, this definitely has a little bit of that vibe, and some of those Hope teams. I recall that was a game he knew all about, this game, this rivalry. So they played tough. And I suspect we're going to see Michigan play tough in this game, but I don't know that that's enough. But the only thing is, maybe Michigan's in their heads a little bit. Maybe Ryan Day coaches tight. The pressure is all on them. And I will say this about the Monday presser, Mike. And first of all, it's the first time in I can't remember how long that there was hardly any Ohio State reporters there. I mean, usually it's just jam packed. And I was talking to Dave Abloff, Michigan's media relations guy, and he was just like, this is the most chill I've ever seen a Monday presser in Ann Arbor before the game. They are talking about just having fun and playing loose. And maybe that's the right formula. Does that overcome talent imbalance? Probably not. But I do think that Michigan's going in there just, looking to have fun and trying to play spoiler.
Well, it's funny how things change. I mean, 3 years ago when this game rolled around, you could sense Ohio State was just overjoyed by the fact Michigan was good again, and the game meant even more. They weren't beating a bad Michigan team. But my sense this year is they don't even care about that. They just want to wreck Michigan and stop the bleeding, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 3-game losing streak. This is tough on Ryan Day, and I can't imagine the pressure he's under. I thought he was under a lot of pressure last week against Indiana, but this is different. I mean, this is, as we know, this game means everything, and it means it here, it means it there for sure. And again, it's just he can't coach tight though. I mean, he can't get caught up in the pressure, and I don't think he will. I'm not saying that that's a possibility. I guess it is a possibility, but I don't see that happening. But stranger things have happened. I just don't think they're going to be. That's the kind of outcome you're going to see on Saturday.
No. Well, not to add any pressure to Ryan Day's plate, but earlier this year, Urban Meyer said this Ohio State team might not only be the most talented ever in Columbus, but possibly as good as any roster he's ever seen. Urban is though, but. They're good. There's no doubt about it.
They're good. I still don't think they're the best Ohio State team I've seen, but certainly Urban Meyer would know better than me. But I think maybe I'm considering injuries and on the offensive line, and we'll see if I'm right though. I think I've got to be right over my former classmate at the University of Cincinnati.
Well, Urban says what Urban says, but for those of us who've been watching for a while, I think we've seen a lot better Ohio State teams than this, don't you?
I do. And again, I think people want to reach for hope. And you go back to that Cooper era when those were outstanding Ohio State teams. But Michigan was good, on the brink of being very good, and had a lot of 4-loss seasons, and they would pull the win off. They'd get the upset. And I don't see this being similar. This Michigan team is not as good as those teams back then that did win pull off those upsets against Ohio State.
No.
But, one thing, and, we've talked about this, Mike, this team has impressed me with the fact that, I remember Colson Loveland after they lost at Illinois. I mean, he basically was the one who said, look, everything's gone, no playoff, nothing. And now it's about wrecking people's seasons. And and playing. And they this team did hold it together. They have not quit. And I think that's something that should be certainly applauded, but when they could have, especially with the guys with NFL near, immediate futures in the NFL coming up. And but again, is that going to pull off an upset on Saturday? No, but I think they'll play hard.
Well, last Saturday we saw Michigan's offense come to life. I mean, I was watching it thinking, where did this come from? I mean, starting with that 2-minute drill in the first half, I don't think we've seen them run a 2-minute drill at all at any point in any game this year. And then in the second half, I mean, the offensive line was just blowing people off the ball. But as much as I'd like to think that means something for Saturday's game, I don't. Because this Ohio State defense is, I mean, we've just talked about that we've seen better Ohio State teams, but right now in 2024, this is an elite defense, isn't it?
Yes, and that's where Ohio State has stepped it up from the last couple of years. And I mean, they're number one total defense, number one scoring defense, and more importantly, they're number two in red zone defense. Maybe that's not more important, but I think it lends to, the fact that they've been keeping people out of the end zone. And it's just, and they're tough to run against. So, I mean, they're taking away a lot. And it's just, watching that game last week, I do wonder if Northwestern just sort of in the second half just sort of like kind of crumbled. And not to discredit what Michigan did, but because the offensive line did look better, and the running game did obviously click. But this is a different animal. This Ohio State defense to what they saw last week. But it's always important to have a confidence boost, and that's certainly what that Northwestern game gave them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having watched a lot of Ohio State tape this year, and then seeing Michigan's offense every week, and I'm being honest here, even given what we saw last week, I cannot in my wildest dreams see Michigan having sustained success in this game. Can you?
No, and I think one way to go at this Ohio State defense is a deep pass attack, and Michigan doesn't have that. Yeah. I mean, they haven't completed a 40-yard pass. I think the longest is 36 yards to Colston. So I don't think that's suddenly going to appear, and that's not disparaging Davis Warren or anybody. It's just that's they just don't have the weapons.
No.
And I do think Tyler Morris, I think he's been just sneaky good the last couple games. I think he's somebody to watch on Saturday, but that's going to be determined if this offensive line, which I keep saying has been the source of so many ills this year.
Oh, yeah.
If they can give Davis some time, maybe he can find Tyler Morris. Maybe, and I don't know what Colston's status is yet. There are those are a couple weapons, but it's just a matter of that offensive line doing what it needs to do to get the running backs going and to certainly give Davis Warren some time.
Oh yeah, as always is the case. So if there's a path to victory or just making this a game, the Michigan offense, in my mind, whatever the game plan is, it has to be to score early, and the defense has got to play lights out, because without early success, let's say on the first two drives, we talked about this before we started taping, those first two drives are scripted. You're going to get your best stuff thrown at the defense. If that doesn't happen, I can see this one going south really fast. Can't you, Angelique?
Absolutely. And this is not a team that has really shown an ability to come back. I mean, they had those two long drives at Illinois and zero red zone success in those, and they used all that time, which actually worked to Illinois' advantage at that point. But, you can't have that. You can have those sustained drives, but you have to come away with Dominic Zavada is great, but you need to have 7. And you can't rely on him, although I think they may have to lean on him a little bit. And I'm sure they feel very confident in what he's capable of doing. But the other thing, too, Mike, that I keep thinking is they need a defensive score. And, there's no Will Johnson more than likely. And he's the guy who's had a couple pick sixes this season. But if they could get something like that and get some momentum that way, that would be enormous. And, maybe you see a Jordan Marshall have a big return. He's certainly shown that capability.
Yeah.
But so you need a spark like that. I suspect they've got to use a trick play. There may be a couple. Maybe Donovan goes 5 for 5 and throws a big, finishes off his regular career with some fireworks again, like he did a couple years ago. But I think they're going to have to do something like that to catch him off guard a little bit. But I do think if they can get something from the defense, a big turnover, Kent Grant picking it up and running this time and not losing the ball, scoring, that would be something.
Well, you hate to depend on that, but it is the one matchup that I do like, that Michigan defense against that Ohio State offense, especially with their bunged up offensive line. I'm not sure how. I think they're still a pretty darn good offensive line.
Yeah, they're still pretty good.
Even bunged up. But I think we can give them problems. But, in order to maximize the defense, and man, we could say this at any point in any game this year, they just can't be on the field all day. So to me, this game falls almost completely on the offense. And I know that's not fair, especially given what we've seen from the offense. But in the end, unless they move the chains, it's just not going to matter, is it, Angelique?
No, it's not. I don't want to keep harping on the offensive line, but we've talked about this over the years. I mean, that's the heart of your offense, and that's where it starts. And that was one of the reasons why I was suspect about this season coming in, before the season even started, is, the 2021 and 2022 lines were the Joe Moore Award winners, and last year's line was good. It was a little bit off. They didn't win the award again, which doesn't validate them completely, but they were not quite as good as those previous two seasons. And then this group was backing up those guys, and they didn't. They never, when they got in those games last season, I was never blown away by them. And I kind of thought that would be a problem. And, Josh Freed was a nice addition, but he wasn't one of those guys like they brought in like Oluwatimi and even Nugent last year. And Miles Hinton's been playing very well, but it's just, to me, that's definitely the meat of this offense, and it starts there. And if they can't get anything going, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if these receivers can get separation, because Davis Bourne is going to be running for his life.
Yeah, which we've seen all year, is pretty much every game.
And that guy has really stood in there. I mean, I give him credit. It's been tough for him, and that was. I know we've talked about this too. I really thought it was probably not. I wouldn't have pulled him. He had the 6 interceptions, but I think he just needed to grow with the guy and let him figure it out, take those lumps, and also use Orgy more, and not just in a play here or there. Have packages and really and use him effectively, which hasn't always been the case. But they came back to Warren, and he's definitely played better.
Yeah, he absolutely has. And but one other aspect that could be key on Saturday, especially early, is Michigan being able to flip the field if the offense struggles, and I expect them to struggle. That means Tommy Doman could be very important, and he was all of last year with a great defense, but he really booted the ball well, flipped the field, but for reasons I don't understand. He has really struggled this year, hasn't he?
He has. I mean, he's had a couple games. I think the USC game was a pretty good one. A couple weeks ago, he seemed like he was finding the light again, and then it's just not there. It's been, I don't think it's like golfer yips, but it's just, maybe it is. I mean, maybe it's just, you think too much. This is such a different position. Like, I can imagine the overthinking that can happen, and that changes how you approach what you're doing, how you're doing your job. But I don't know. It's been puzzling, and I don't know if a cold game affects a punter more. I suspect it does, but they're going to have to. They really will need him to come through, because that was I think back to the Zoltan Mesko era, and they need that kind of performance. And I don't know. It's there's so many elements that we've talked about that are just it's just not quite there. It's just not quite there. And then you have a team that can expose all these weaknesses. So it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be really tough for Michigan.
Earlier this week, I had longtime Buckeye beat writer Tim May on, one of your friends, and the other day, and he said, "Hey, Mike, we've seen upsets over the years on both sides in this series, so that's what could happen again Saturday." And I thought, Tim, yes, we have, but in most of those years, both teams were pretty darn good, and there was a lot of NFL talent on Michigan on the other side of the ball, on both sides of the ball, I should say.
Correct. Yeah.
The talent was close to equal. No one in their right mind would say that about this year's matchup, though, would they?
No, I mean, I think that Michigan, if you're going to go mano a mano, there are some advantages, and we talked about Mason Graham being one of them, and maybe even Kenneth and Colston. I mean, when he's healthy, he is very dangerous. But generally speaking, and the critical piece too is quarterback. I mean, they got a pretty good quarterback. And looking at his numbers, I mean, and he can run and he can make things happen. And just looking at some of the numbers that every quarterback, when they get harassed on the field, they have their production declines. But his hasn't been sharp decline, and he's been able to hang in there. And that's what I was talking to Josiah Stewart about this Tuesday night after practice about what does he see from a quarterback after he sacked him. And I don't mean like wincing in pain, but like, does that put some kind of imprint in his brain? And he absolutely believes that the quarterback, you just see him now thinking more on his throws and thinking more about, well, who's coming from this side. And that's what, he wants to do on Saturday is get in Howard's mind and make him think and make mistakes. And, he's another piece that Josiah Stewart's a very critical piece on Saturday.
Absolutely.
So there are these little things that, again, I'm not saying, oh, yeah, they're going to pull off the upset, but there are little things that make you think, oh, okay, yeah, I think it's going to be a 30-point loss, but this could happen. So that's what you hang your hope on, I guess, if you're a Michigan fan.
Well, most Michigan fans I've been talking to seem to be expecting an Ohio State take no prisoners approach to this game. If they get up, they will not take their foot off the gas. It sort of reminds me of back in the day when, I think the year before Bo came in 69 when Woody went for two when they were up, 5 touchdowns. And he was asked after the game, why did you go for 2 then? He said, because I couldn't go for 3. I think that is going to be the approach of Ohio State this week because, the guy with the headsets on the sideline, Ryan Day, he needs to make that frothing fan base of Ohio State happy, doesn't he?
He does. And it goes back to the hang 100 on him thing. Maybe he gets his chance to finally live up to that. And of course I don't see that, but I mean, it could be, it could be ugly. And I don't think he'd mind that. I think that it is pent up frustration on their part and for sure on Ryan Day's part. I thought everybody's mocking or people have problems with Will Howard after the game last week against Indiana, putting out fake cigarette and having some fun with that. That to me doesn't bother me. I think it's kind of fun but that's their attitude, and I think that's if they could take a Michigan mascot and step on them, that's what they would do after the game.
I agree.
So, and 2 years ago, I'm sure they've seen plenty of pictures of Michigan planting the Michigan flag in the middle of the Block O. So there are all these motivations. It's on both sides. I mean, they're both focused on each other every day. But to all the points you've made, this one means so much to them and really to Ryan Day.
Well, whatever happens on Saturday, Michigan is going bowling. We accomplished that last week. And there's been talk that the Music City Bowl wanted Michigan, but now I guess they're leaning towards Nebraska because they think Michigan might not travel well this year.
Yeah.
So now the Pinstripe Bowl is looking more and more like the destination. I even saw something yesterday that Michigan representatives were doing a site look or whatever in New York at the Pinstripe Bowl as a destination. But, to me, it doesn't matter what bowl you go to. Those 15 practices and getting the young guys some reps and some game time, that's what's a key now, isn't it?
It is. And to your point about, not traveling, I was looking at StubHub for tickets for this game on Saturday, and they're low, and there are plenty of them. So I'm assuming there won't be a lot of Michigan fans at Ohio Stadium on Saturday for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I mean, the Pinstripe Bowl was the one I started joking earlier in the season, the press box. I'm like, okay, this team looks destined for the Pinstripe Bowl, and everybody, ha, 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 ha. And I've always wanted to go there. Frankly, it's a Yankee Stadium open air press box will be freezing to death. It'll be very interesting. But it is important to get those bowl practices. I mean, they can get 20 hours a week, and you based on a story that our high school writer David Garicki wrote the other day. Belleville's coach told him that Bryce Underwood's father said that Bryce would be at practice December 19th. So you get these early enrollee guys in, start getting them acclimated to what they're about to encounter once they get to college. And it will be interesting to see with the portal opening, how many guys are going to jump in the portal from Michigan. I suspect there's going to be a few. And the guys who are going to the NFL will probably shut it down. So you're going to see a lot of new faces, I think, getting more of the reps. And it's always good to have. And it's good for the coaches to get coaching reps, too. I mean, this is still a staff that's trying to figure things out even after this long season. I mean, they've got to and look, it's going to be an important off season. And I suspect, again, this will be an immediate thing that Sharon Moore has to make head coach decisions now once this season is over. And he has to look at every position coach, both of his coordinators, well, 3 coordinators, special teams also, and make some decisions because, as much as we've talked about the players and I finally asked Miles Hinton the other day, Mike, they kept saying, well, we're just not executing. We're not executing. And I kind of look at it as the coaches are coaching you how to execute. Mm-hmm. And to me, you got to hold the coaches accountable too. And the players can do what they're told to do. They can only do so much, but are they being taught the right way? And I think that's something that Sharon has to evaluate and make some very hard decisions coming up here. I would think before the bowl game and start moving forward. And they've got a lot of momentum now on the recruiting front, all the Bryce Underwood news, and take advantage of that. But they do need those practices. There's no doubt.
Well, final question before we let you get away, Angelique, and this sort of plays off what you were just talking about, but whatever happens on Saturday after that game, I mean, you're really looking at 2025. That's where everything has to shift. I mean, the next day. And then the thing we know is that by the fall of 2025, maybe from a staff standpoint, but definitely from a roster standpoint, this is going to be a very different team because it has to be, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. I mean, and coaching, I mean, look, everybody's talked about Kirk Campbell and the job he's done as offensive coordinator. It's been lacking. And is he going to be back? Grant Newsom's a terrific guy, but I thought before the season, I thought that was a big job to give him. And he has not been coaching that long. Offensive line, and he played the position, obviously, but it's a huge undertaking. And it's not just, you're not just coaching 1 or 2 receivers or whatever guys you're going to start. You got to get the starting 5 together. And, maybe Sharon, changes the pieces of the puzzle a little bit, moves guys around. But he does, I think, have to bring in a name coordinator, offensive coordinator. Wink has, I think, definitely picked it up in the last few weeks. He's definitely, I think the defense has looked better. But there's weaknesses on special teams. There's all things he's got to look at. But in terms of the roster, sure. And one thing, I was at the game last week, I was talking to a bunch of the former Michigan players, a couple quarterbacks, and talking about Bryce, and they all just sort of like, look, he's still a freshman. You don't know what a freshman quarterback can do right away. So I still think they got to go in and get an experienced quarterback in the portal. And I know everybody wants Bryce Underwood to start right away, but I'm not sure that's the right path. But I think if there's like a Miller Moss or somebody like him in the portal, you got to try to get him.
I agree with you, and I think that's going to happen. So after Saturday, we're going to see a lot of moving parts in a lot of phases of the Michigan football operation, I think. So it's going to be interesting. But first things first, we're going to try to enjoy this game Saturday. And, for 2 folks like us that you've been covering it for a long time, and I've been watching it all my life. I've seen crazy things happen in this game, some really crazy things. And I'm sort of, as I told you before we started taping, I hate for that to be my game plan, waiting for something crazy to happen in the game. But it really has to this week if Michigan's going to have a chance. But as always, for the 14th time in 15 years. Again, we missed the COVID year. It has been just great to have you with us, Angelique. I always look forward to it. And so I hope you and your family have a wonderful Thanksgiving and hopefully an enjoyable Saturday down in Columbus. And we look forward to that next visit.
Well, I appreciate it, Mike. I always do, and I always look forward to this. And happy, I almost said Happy New Year, Happy Thanksgiving to your family. And at least I know that I'm going to be happy getting Skyline and Graders when I'm in Ohio. So that's definitely a carrot dangling at the end of the stick here for me.
On Quick Hits today, no injury updates since Monday. It doesn't sound like we'll have Colston Loveland or Will Johnson, but other than that, we're ready to rock for Saturday. Here are a few game day notes of interest. Michigan holds the all-time lead in the series with 61 wins, 51 losses, and 6 ties. Last year on November 25th in Ann Arbor, we made it 3 in a row with a 30-24 win. The first meeting between these two teams was on October 16, 1897 in Ann Arbor, a 34-0 win for Michigan. Ohio State finished the season 11-2 last year and lost to Missouri in the Cotton Bowl 14-3. They finished the year ranked number 10 in the country. Playing in the shoe is always intimidating, but heading into Saturday, Michigan is 500 down there, 28-2. Ryan Day is in his 6th year as head coach and has a record of 66-9. The weatherman says it's going to be a great day for football. Sunny skies with temps in the upper 20s, light winds, and a very slight chance of some snow flurries. The game will be broadcast on Fox with Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt up in the booth and the All-American girl Jenny Taft on the sidelines. I think most of us have bad vibes about this one, but we're playing with house money this year. No one expects us to mount a challenge to the Buckeyes. So hopefully we come out playing loose and have some fun. All of the pressure is on Ohio State, so let's make them feel it. Next week we'll be back to recap the game and talk about what's next for Michigan football. In the coming weeks we'll also spend more time on men's and women's hoops and hockey. All 3 of those teams off to very good starts this year. Before we close, I'd like to wish each and every one of you a very happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy that time with family and friends and watching the Lions-Bears game. That does it for now. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Think victory, beat Ohio State. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!